You're listening to episode 54, Danielle's story, a daughter with Eosinophilic Gastroenteritis on the Child Life On Call podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Child Life On Call podcast. When your child is sick, the whole world seems to stop in its tracks. Plans and priorities change, and your number one job becomes figuring out how to get your child well again. For some of us, rest, medications, and relaxation can do the trick. But for others, it takes more. It takes countless doctor appointments, invasive medical testing, therapy, surgeries, the list goes on, and then you still may not have all of the answers or results you were hoping for. This podcast features parents of children that have an illness or medical condition and gives them a place to share their own journeys and experiences. We will talk about the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, but one thing seems to remain the same. Children are resilient and teach us more about ourselves and the world than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for lending a listening ear and opening up your heart to these families and this podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor.
Because I am talking to you about someone I grew, right? I grew this person. It was not an easy process, and I'm still learning it every single day, and you're not hearing me. And I think that is the key, is that parents need to feel heard.
Hello, everybody. Y'all, today is an episode for the books for many different reasons. First and foremost, I'm going to be real cool, okay? Like, I'm not going to freak out like I kind of did during our conversation. But Danielle is mom to Della, who is a sweet little Elmo-loving, glitter-everything 5-year-old girl. For her entire life, she has suffered from being able to keep food down and weight on, and was even misdiagnosed with chronic toddler diarrhea. I know, it was weird. I'd never heard of it, and it didn't make much sense to her mom either. But as the resilient advocate that Danielle is, she fought for answers until they found one. The second reason I'm excited is because I'm literally fangirling the entire episode. I have to apologize for that. I sound kind of weird, but that's fine. No shame. I spent years after college in the Washington, D.C. metro area and listened to radio personality Danni Starr every single morning on my way to work. I've been following her and her daughter's journey and have always been a huge fan of her real life, don't hold back, this is life, you got to deal with it mentality. My conversation with her about her daughter today does not disclude that in any capacity. She's absolutely amazing and has so much to offer families about the reflection that she has had on her past 5 years with her daughter and how they're moving forward in the future. Okay, enough of me. Let's get started.
So I'm Danielle, and I am 35. I originally grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yes, it is cold. Yes, we all love Prince. Everyone always says that. Is it cold, and do you love Prince? Yes, of course. Both of those things are completely accurate. About 8 years ago, when I moved to the District, Maryland, and Virginia area, we call it the DMV, and I was in media for about 20 years. I got out of media and became a teacher. So I am now teaching first grade special education in DC. I am a mother of 2 kids, Marley and Della. They are 8 and 6. I'm a partner to an amazing man named Jeff. And life is crazy right now, but it's also super beautiful and complicated. And our youngest has a chronic illness, so there's just so many things. But currently I am in Virginia. That's where I live. I teach in DC. Teacher, I dabble in media just a little bit because it has played such a big role in my life. But that's the summation of where I am right now.
That's awesome. You wear so many different hats, and I got to know you.
I forget the hat.
For sure. I got to know you when I lived in DC. So I went to Penn State for school and moved down to DC in 2007. And, back then we didn't really have podcasts and we were still doing CDs and radio. And that's how I got to know you, just listening to you on the radio. So it's very surreal for me to be like actually speaking to you. And then I followed you on Instagram and have just kind of since followed your story and seen you on a bunch of things on TLC, and have always just been amazed at your ability to articulate what you stand for, what's important to you. And I know that your girls are the center of your life. And
they are.
So I'm so honored that you're here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really grateful to be here.
And so I think we're going to be talking about Della today. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So let's start off talking a little bit about her and kind of what the first signs or symptoms were that something was going on with her.
So Della is a vibrant child. She is full of so much life and personality. When she was born, we had a very nice, easy birth. It was as easy as they can be. We
Yes.
had a good birth. Everything was good. She was healthy at birth, no issues. I breastfed for a year, and I was ready to be done and kind of get my body back, in the sense of like it belonged to her.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to get my body back. But as we started to try to introduce food, even before I stopped breastfeeding, as we started to try to introduce food, she refused it. She did not want food at all. She was completely content with the breast milk, and she wanted nothing else. And at first the doctors were saying like, oh, that's okay because she's getting everything she needs. But then when I was ready to wean and she was still refusing food, we knew that that couldn't work. That was not
Right.
going to happen. Then when she started eating, food made her sick. It just wasn't something that, which is crazy, right? The one thing that you really, really need to sustain your life is food. And it wasn't conducive to her growing, to helping her, anything like that. And so we had a year, I think she was about she was about 2 years old. And so she was tiny. She was very, very small. She didn't really grow a lot. But then we had 1 year where she completely did not grow at all. Not an inch, not a centimeter, nothing. And I knew something was majorly wrong. And she started to get super lethargic. She also didn't speak in the beginning, like at all, like that milestone of like, they're supposed to have this many words at this point. There were so many different things that were happening, but she could communicate. It wasn't that she just wasn't talking and she did nothing. Like she could communicate. We knew everything that she wanted and needed. And so we were kind of thinking that, oh, she has an older sister and maybe her older sister is just talking for her. Right. Because we had a very talkative older sister. So we were like, okay, well, maybe she's just not talking because she doesn't need to say anything. Everybody's doing everything for her. But really it was that she lacked the energy to even talk. She didn't have the nutrients she needed. She was in failure to thrive, malabsorption, all of these different things. And we didn't know any of this because nobody could figure out what was happening. So about 2 years old, that's when she got super lethargic. We wound up in the hospital. And every time we wound up in the hospital from about 2 years old to 5 years old, they were just treating symptoms. They never ever, there wasn't a diagnosis. There wasn't a cure. There wasn't talk about a cure. It was just, she's not doing well. We're in the hospital for 3 to 7 days. She's stabilized. We go home. It's about a month or maybe less. We're back in the hospital for another 3 to 7 days. And this happened for years. And the original diagnosis, which if you ask me is the laziest diagnosis I've ever heard, but the original diagnosis was chronic toddler diarrhea. And I remember looking at the doctor like, are you kidding me? Like, I remember thinking, you went to school for so long to tell a parent chronic toddler diarrhea. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing, and maybe it is, but I
have never heard of that.
Right. I knew that this was so much more than that. I knew that my child was suffering. I knew that something was wrong, and I knew that chronic toddler diarrhea was laughable because that's not what it was. Right. Easily. And so that's where we kind of were in the beginning. That's what they told us it was. And so we were kind of dealing with that for years thinking, okay, well, we'll try to get through this. And then finally, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we finally, or maybe a little bit longer than that, but either way, it took many, many years to actually get an actual diagnosis, actual, actual, I can't even, a good
Like
team.
the diagnosis. Yeah.
That we got the diagnosis, we got an excellent team, we got plans, we are supported now. Like, it feels like night and day from the beginning to where we are now.
Wow. What do you think changed? Or is it somebody like you had an advocate in the hospital that wouldn't stop and was on your team?
I think I was the advocate.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. I think that I wouldn't stop. I think I said a million different times, this is not chronic toddler diarrhea. My child is withering away. I'm not going to. I used to spend nights next to her. She would vomit in her sleep randomly. Actually, Facebook just reminded me how awesome of Facebook. Reminded me that exactly a year ago, I was laying next to her while she was on her side, and she had vomited 4 times in her sleep. So, we had so many things happening and no real answers. Finally, it got to the point where my best friend, who is a nurse practitioner, and I were like, something is really wrong. We need to push people. We need to say we're not taking no for an answer. I don't care what test you have to do, what you have to figure out, but something is not right, and we need more support. And, I was exhausted, and she was exhausted. Her body was fighting itself, and we didn't know what it was, and it just was awful. It was awful on the entire family. And, sometimes it's still really hard, but at least now we're managing. We're in a whole different position than we were when this started. And even 2 years ago, we're in a whole different position.
What was the diagnosis they ended up giving you about a year ago?
So originally the diagnosis was eosinophilic esophagitis. And that made some sense. And I'll explain that in a second. But then once we did more tests, we realized that it wasn't just eosinophilic esophagitis. It was also eosinophilic gastroenteritis, which all of this is to say, these are really big names for severe allergies. The average person has about 400 eosinophils, I believe, in their bloodstream. Those are allergy markers. Della has 4,000. So her body is allergic to itself. It's allergic to everything. It's allergic to outdoors. It's allergic to food. It's allergic to animals. It's allergic to, she can get a new allergy at any time, really. And so it's a very big gamble. And it's very rare. It's like 10 in 100,000 people get it. They don't know how to navigate it that well. It's still very, very new, and they don't have all the answers, and we are learning every single day new things, and it's a lot. It's hard. It's really difficult. But she's such an amazing kid, and she's such a fighter, and I appreciate her spirit, because if she was a sad, sick kid, I don't know if we could survive this. But she's a really happy, sick kid, and that has been the blessing in all of this, is that her attitude is what is necessary to survive something like this, I think.
For sure. Gosh, well, it sounds like she got it from you. Honestly, having a mom who, doesn't stop. And I always tell parents, you don't have to be the expert. You just have to be the advocate. But in your case, like listening to you talk and spout off this medical terminology, it's like, you didn't get a choice. You went to medical school whether you wanted to or not.
I did, and I've had to do so much research about this, and I have more phone calls with, our team is really extensive. We've got immunology, we've got gastro, we have dermatology, because she's got that really wicked triad of asthma, allergies, and eczema. And so the allergies impact the breathing, the allergies impact the skin. If the skin is flaring up, there's usually an allergy, even if we don't know what it is. And it's all kind of connected. And so you're right. Like, I've had to do multiple crash courses in dermatology and in gastro, in immunology, and all these different things, because I have to really kind of stay on top of this, because I am her best advocate.
Right.
She's pretty good at advocating for herself too, which is awesome, but they don't always take our kiddos seriously.
I know. I was just going to ask you, how do you explain to her what's going on? Or is it because she has been in and out of the hospital, almost her whole life that it's kind of second nature to her? Or how do you guys talk about and get prepared for a stay or a test, or what's your approach?
I think because it's literally been her entire life, it just has become her normal. And luckily for her, a lot of the procedures that she's had to have didn't come with pain. Now that switched when we had to do the G tube because she woke up and she was in pain, and that was confusing for her because when she's done tons and tons of biopsies on her colon, esophagus, on her intestines, and all these different things. But when she wakes up from those, she's not really in pain. So the hospital hasn't really been distressing to her. It's been inconvenient, sure, but she likes being with Dr. Brown Bear, and she likes her child life team, and she likes the people she sees. But this last time was really difficult because she woke up in pain. She had a full-blown surgery, and she woke up in pain, and that shocked her because she was like, wait, what is this? Like, I knew I was going to the doctor, but no one told me how much pain I was going to be in. And even with us trying to manage the pain, she was just kind of shocked. And this last time was very difficult for everyone because I think not only did her body take a hit, I think her spirit took a hit. And she was just like, why me? And that has been the hard part, is that I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for why you, kiddo. I'm sorry that, or why did the universe make me allergic, or why did God make me allergic? I don't have an answer for that. And that, I think, is the difficult part for me, is that I don't have the answers for that. And so I try really hard to explain things the best way that I can. And then sometimes I just say the truth. Like, there are things that happen in life that are unfair, and this is one of those things. Like, you didn't deserve this. Nobody really deserves to be sick all the time. But this is where we are, and we just kind of have to push through it. And I think that she's done such a great job with really advocating for herself, understanding her allergies, making the most of the life that she has been given. And she's so positive. She loves to dance. She loves to sing. Like, she's just full of so much life. And I think that balances everything out. I really do.
How do you find yourself keeping track of, I guess I'm not totally sure. Is she fed through a G tube still, or what's her main source of nutrition?
So we originally had an NG tube, so the one that goes through the nose to the stomach,
Right.
And that worked. She had gained weight. Actually, I think she gained 6 pounds the first month we had, which was huge because that was like the most weight she had gained in like 4 years.
Yeah.
And so it was a really big deal. But then she sneezed. She had an allergic reaction, and she sneezed, and that bad boy came out. And I had to be the one to put it back in. And, I'm not a nurse or a doctor. I'm none of these things. And I don't want to do that. And not because I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the person who's making my child uncomfortable, who's causing her pain. I think the psychological effects of that are real. And I think that I'm supposed to be a safe space. And when I'm forced into this position where now I have to put this tube back into her nose, and she knows it doesn't feel good. And also, it was like she had superhuman strength.
Yeah.
When we tried to
It's
get back
amazing,
in,
right?
she was not here for it. She did not want any part of it. She had superhuman strength. And I said, we can't do this. So then they said, okay, well, this seems like it's going to be a more permanent solution for a while. So let's go with the G tube. So now she has the G tube. She takes her feeds overnight. So she gets about half of her calories from the G tube. And then she's able to eat manually during the day as best that she can. Okay. My guess is, because food still causes her a lot of pain and discomfort, is that she'll get more than half of her food or her nutrients from the G tube. But right now we're trying to maintain as much as possible with the regular food and eating.
Oh, yeah. It's like, how do you have a positive relationship with something that makes you feel terrible and sick? Like, it's just a lot to get through. So is she in kind of feeding therapy and all of that? Have y'all gone down that road?
You see, that's another one of our teammates is our good old psychologist. She does meeting because what we don't want to have happen, she's a little girl and she's a little Black girl. And there are all these things that are tied to being little girls and being little Black girls. And I just don't want her to have a complex about food or, body dysmorphia or any of these things because she has to be weighed a lot, right? Mm-hmm. She has to be weighed a lot. We have to pay attention to her weight. We have to talk about her weight. And at some point, I just feel like, is that going to be detrimental to her as a little girl? And how can I protect her in that? And so that has been really great working with the psychologist who is like, listen, you're ahead of the game. You're worried about these things.
You're thinking about it, yeah.
We're not attacking it afterwards. We are doing it before. We're saying, hey, here are the things I'm concerned about. Here are the things I want to address and want to make sure like nothing pops up on us. And so that was really, it was really reassuring for me that, sometimes we think we're bad moms or bad caretakers or all these things. And then somebody says, the fact that you're even thinking about this is proof that you're not terrible at what you're doing. And I really appreciated that messaging because it's a struggle to be the mother of a sick kid. It's the struggle to be a sister of a sick kid. Mm-hmm. It's a struggle. It's a lot. It involves the entire family. Like our lives work a lot around Della and her illness.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Marley and I guess when you leave for these hospital stays, our sister goes in for surgery, her life kind of gets flipped upside down and she doesn't really get a choice to be involved or not, especially during COVID now. She can't even come visit.
No, it's been awful. She can't. And they're best friends and also best enemies. They're a little bit of both.
Of course.
But especially when one of them is sick, all they want to do is be together and make sure the other one is okay and all of these things. And what I'm finding is this is so hard on Marley. This whole thing is Marley's such a feeler. She's so compassionate. She has a huge level of empathy, and she really, really just always wants to be around her sister and protect her sister. And that hasn't always been. It can't happen when your sister is sick or in the hospital, and especially during a global pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so, we utilize the hell out of FaceTime and, WhatsApp and all these different amazing, useful things with technology to keep them in contact while she's in the hospital. But it's more so, that psychological piece of just, she finally came to me, Marley, and she said, I never tell Della no because she's sick all the time and I feel bad when I tell her no. And I'm like, no, you have to be able to tell your sister no. Like just because your sister has some things going on doesn't mean you have to tell her yes. And Della knew. She was kind of manipulating the situation. Like, she wanted to play with her sister's dolls. Her sister says no, and it's like, oh, but I don't feel good, and that can't be what it is. We have to still understand that. Okay, you have a chronic illness. It is a big deal. It's dangerous. And also, you don't get everything that you want.
Yep.
You gotta balance it. And even as a mom and as a parent, I have to balance it myself. It's like, okay, yes, she had a surgery. Yes, this happened. She still doesn't get everything she wants. And that's hard sometimes, right?
Those boundaries for sure. Even in the hospital, it can be hard to, even as child life specialists, when we're given donations, we want to go out and just give, because it's like that temporary like glee that gives the patient that. But is that really the most helpful thing, or is helping them, through their situation the longer lasting piece that's the most important?
Right. And I'm like, every time we leave the hospital, it looks like Christmas came early,
Totally.
We leave. Child life supports us so much and they're so amazing, but we leave the hospital and it's like, oh my God, more stuff. Yay.
I know.
And I get it. It's like we're trying to make her happy, but also I'm trying to raise good kids who don't feel entitled and all these other things. And I just feel like we're making it a little harder.
Yeah,
giving her all the presents because it's been a little tough on her,
Yeah. Gosh, well, your psychologist is right on. You're thinking about so many things, and because you are, it gives you the ability to advocate too. Like, Are these, so this is totally different, but I equate it to cervical checks when you're going through labor, right? Like, do we have to check me every 10 minutes? Like, is that a real thing? Or can I advocate for myself and say, let's wait? And like, if
Right?
they come into your room and they say, hey, we need to weigh her today, it's like, well, we just did an hour ago. Like, when's the next time we have to do it? It's just about asking questions. Because a lot of times I think you'll find like healthcare professionals be like, no, actually, you're right. We can wait. I was just going to get it over with now. And it's like, okay, cool. Glad I asked.
Yes. One of the craziest things that we experienced was prior to us leaving the hospital when she got the NG tube, they told us that we could not leave unless we dropped the tube on her. And what that meant is they needed us to put it in. And no one said that. No one talked to us about that. We were getting ready to check out. We were so excited. And they said, okay, last thing you got to do. We watched all the videos. There were tons of videos from like 1980 that we had to watch, those old instructional videos. We watched these videos and we were like, okay, we feel prepared. We get to take her home. We get to do these things. Like we were feeling confident. And then the whole doctor team comes in and they say, all right, you got to drop the tube before you go. And I'm like, wait, what? And they said, and basically like practice. Like we had to practice on our own kid. And I'm like, look, I'm not doing that. I'm not practicing on her. She has a perfectly good tube in her nose right now that could last up to 30 days. You want me to take this tube out, make her uncomfortable and put it back in just so you know? I said, no, because here's what's going to happen. Even if it comes out at home, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to take her to the emergency room because I'm not putting it back in. And they told us literally that we couldn't leave, that somebody had to drop the tube. And so God bless dads for all their courage and how amazing they are. But they have an amazing bonus dad named Jeff. And Jeff said, I'll never forget, he looked at the doctor and there was about 7 of them in the room. They were doing rounds. And he looked at the doctor and he said, so she just has to drop the tube. And the doctor said, yeah. And he said, okay, she's dropping the tube. And and the doctor goes, yep, that's all that needs to happen. And he goes, well, she's going to drop the tube on me. Then she just has to drop the tube. You just need to know she knows how to do it, right? And it was at that moment where all the doctors like paused. Everybody's looking around the room. I'm like, wait a minute, what? And they go, well, you did just say she has to drop the tube. And so he volunteered. They said they had never heard anything like that, but he was advocating. He didn't want to put our daughter through it again. And so I had to put a tube down his nose before they let us leave the hospital. And then afterwards they go, wow, you're amazing because it's so much harder to put a tube in an adult. And I was like, why didn't you say that?
Oh, I have freaking tears in my eyes.
He did it. Me too. I literally cried. I cried because I could not, first of all, it's not even his biological child. And second of all, I didn't even think like, oh, well, can I put it down myself? Like none of that crossed my mind. I was just so adamant that I didn't want to cause her pain. And he was like, okay, well, if this is what we have to do to leave, we're doing it. And sure enough, like it was awful putting it down his nose and he cried. And so we knew that it wasn't an easy thing for a child. It's impacting an adult like that. And so we were just really over it and exhausted and sad. But that was the moment where I realized you just have to ask, you have to advocate, you have to demand.
Get creative.
Because, yep, exactly. You have to be innovative as hell. Because when Jeff said, okay, she'll drop the tube, but it's going to be on me, never in a million years did I think that was going to fly, but it sure as hell did.
Oh my gosh. Well, I thought you were going to say that he like picked up the tube and just dropped it on the floor. I was like, that also might work. But no, he went a step further. Whoa.
He was so great. It was amazing.
So I guess other parents who are listening who are going to be soon to be tube droppers or have done it and are struggling, do y'all have any tips for doing it at home?
Oh man. I don't, because as you can see, we wound up with the G tube because it was very difficult for us. But I would say, you know what I would say? I would say that if this is something that seems like it's going to be a more long-term thing, then I would advocate for the G tube. It's so much easier. And I know it's a little more invasive. I do, but you have to know your child. You have to know your situation. And so, I don't know what's right for everyone, but I know that NG tube caused her so much discomfort. Yes, it just went down her nose, and she had to have like a real surgery for the G tube. But with the G tube, she can do anything. It's discreet. She can live her life. She can be super active. We were even worried about her being at the park with the NG tube because it can just get pulled out, you know, and things like that. She can do her whole life with this G tube regularly. And I don't know. I don't know why they go to the NG tube first. I get it because it's less invasive, but is it really compared to like the discomfort and the pain that it causes the kids? Like, I don't know if I actually agree with that.
That's a good point, especially with long-term type feeding that you have to go through. You know, it's one thing when it's a week and, you know, a G-tube probably isn't worth it. But when we're going full steam ahead.
Months, years, yeah, it makes more sense. And so I would say to really know what you're in for. If it, like you said, if this is going to be a week or two, okay, get that NG tube, no problem. But if you're in this for the long haul, if there's no foreseeable end, why even go that route? You know you're going to need this for longer. Advocate for what's going to be better for your child, yourself, and your family. And that's what we finally wound up doing.
Do you have a system for how you keep track of meds, of...
A system. I don't think I have a system for anything in my life.
I know people are like, I put on my phone, my calendar.
Nope. I think my system is organized chaos. No, she feeds at night, and all of her stuff is pretty simple because we know it so well now. And we have EpiPens and Benadryl and Zyrtec and all the good allergy meds everywhere in the house. Literally, you can walk about 5 steps and you'll find an EpiPen or Benadryl or Zyrtec somewhere. And so the medicine is just kind of everywhere because her allergies are so severe. Right. So you're not going to miss the meds around here, but there's not a real system because we're kind of scared a lot. Right. So we just have it all over.
Yeah, your system is accessibility whenever we need it.
That's what it is. There you go. Yes, our system is 100% accessibility, and that works for us.
Can you talk about any maybe positive or unexpected or maybe like surprising moments kind of throughout this experience that you probably wouldn't have known at the beginning of your journey?
Yeah, I always feel like in many situations in my life, I've always felt like, damn, why did this happen to me? Right? Because in the moment, we always do. We're like, well, how did I wind up here? Why did this happen? Or things like that. And with Della getting sick, I thought, why did this happen to us? Or like, how did this happen? And I think what I'm learning more and more every day, and it's not easy. It's not an easy revelation in any capacity, and it's something I have to work on. It's a habit that I'm trying to maintain of like reminding myself that in my darkest moments and in the worst moments that have happened or the most trying and difficult times in my life, I grew so much. And I'm seeing that in Della and in Marley as well. I'm seeing it in my whole family. This illness, this chronic illness is a very, very big part of our life. Our lives, but it's not completely negative. And that is a little shocking, right? Like it's a whole illness, and we've spent tons of time in the hospital, and we have also learned levels of compassion and empathy that I don't think are possible unless you go through some really hard, awful things. And for a 6-year-old little girl, she is so empathetic, so smart, and so kind, and she is just so many things, and so much of it comes from the fact that she has been sick her whole life. And so I guess one of the biggest surprises is that it hasn't been all bad. We have been connected to some really amazing people. We have been able to raise some money for some really great causes for kids who are sick. We have been able to help other families who have no idea what this disease is, but we've kind of been dealing with it for 6 years. So like we have a little more info than the newbies. Mm-hmm. So it's not all bad, which is great. It's not all bad.
And you kind of just touched on one of my last questions, but have you guys been able to connect with other families going through an illness like she has?
Yeah, so Della has her own little Instagram page, the Della Diaries, and she loves
Okay.
it. And we kind of update her journey on there. And as a result, so many different people have reached out or given us information on Della Safe Food, as we call it in our house. And we have lists of foods. I've had teenagers reach out that said, "Hey, I had a G-tube at the same age. I would love to talk to Della and just let her know like it gets better. Everything's going to be okay." And just the amount of people who have poured out love, support, money, all types of different things, because this has not been cheap. That is the biggest thing, is this has not been cheap in any capacity. And it's on a teaching salary, you're like, wait a minute, what happened? So it's just a lot. But yes, we've been in contact with tons of people, and I think the best thing for us is that we've never really felt alone in this. It is isolating to have a child with a sickness, but the beautiful part for us is that we've never really felt alone. We felt very supported. I felt more alone by the medical professionals than I did from regular people. Regular people have always been like, "You're not alone. What can we do?" And then there were like a lot of medical professionals in the beginning who were just like, "Oh, this isn't a big deal." It turns out it was a really big deal. And but we've always felt really supported by our community, our people, and that has been such a blessing for us, because I know everyone does not have that kind of support.
Talking about healthcare professionals wanting, and kind of missing that like human connection type thing. What do you think they could do? Like looking back, I'm trying to formulate this question as I as I'm talking, but like what do you want from them? What would help? Like what would have helped 6 years ago?
I honestly think, okay, so as a teacher, we spend some time on social emotional learning as well, right?
Yeah.
So I once had a doctor who, I think bedside manner is so important, especially when you're dealing with kids. I think bedside manner is so important. So I once had a doctor who called me. First of all, when I met the doctor, I knew that we weren't going to really hit it off, because I am a very emotional connector, and the doctor was a very medical person in the sense of like, the way she spoke was super medical, and I didn't understand it. And I'm a smart person, so it was like, we're not speaking the same language. Can we try to compromise somehow and get to the right place? But she called me after I had a checkup, and she said something I'll never forget. She was like, "I'm just calling to tell you that you have this." And I responded without even thinking, because it was so quick. I said, "No, the hell I don't." Because I didn't know what she was talking about. Turns out it was an ear infection, but she said the actual medical term for ear infection. She didn't say, "Hey, Danielle, you have an ear infection." She said, "You have whatever the hell she said." And I literally said, "No, the hell I don't. What's that?" And she said, "Oh, well, it's an ear infection." I'm like, "Well, why didn't you say that?" So there's a lot to say about really understanding, like read the room. Like everybody in the room's not a doctor. Just you are. So
you're the only one actually.
Like nobody in here is a doctor but you, and you're the only one who understands that language. And no matter how smart I am or how much research I've done on this is not my wheelhouse, right? Like, this is yours. And so I need you to help. I need you to bring me in. And another thing is you got to remember you're dealing with someone's child, right? An extension of a person. There is nothing in this world that I would not do for my children. There's nothing in this world. So when I'm dealing with a doctor who seems like they cannot take the time to hear my real concerns, it is the most frustrating thing ever, because I am talking to you about someone I grew, right? This isn't, this is someone I grew this person. It was not an easy process, and I'm still learning it every single day, and you're not hearing me. And I think that is the key, is that parents need to feel heard.
I know. And it's like, the things you are saying aren't so, it's not hard. It's break it down to where the person you're speaking to can understand it and offer that empathetic connection. You don't even have to be good at it. I've been with people that are not great, but you can see they're trying, and that's what it's about too. Yeah.
Yep. All you got to do is try. You're not going to get it right all the time, especially if you're very scientific. I get it. I get it, but you got to try, and you got to remember that we're people before we're anything else. We're not a diagnosis and then a person. We are people, and then there's a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's good advice. And I'm going to put that in a little soundbite and send it on over to the American Academy of Pediatrics and say, y'all need to listen up.
I know that's right. Come on, resources.
Well, if people want to connect with you, I love that you mentioned, is it Della's Diaries on Instagram?
It's at the Della Diaries. That's how you can find out more about Della and her journey. And then I am Miss Danielle Ferrantino on Instagram.
Okay, great. And I know you yourself have written a couple books and have platforms and podcasts. And where can other people find those resources?
I'm so glad you said that. Look at me. I'm supposed to be branding and supporting my own self.
I'm like, remember how amazing you are? Let me remind you real quick.
Yes, I wrote a book. It's actually pretty awesome, and I'm not saying that because I wrote it. I did write a book. It's really good. I wrote it back in 2016, and it is actually more probably relevant right now in the current times of what's happening in 2020, but it's called Empathy and Eyebrows. You can find it anywhere, Amazon, but Jeff Bezos has a lot of money, so if you really want to support authors, you should get it from Itasca Books. You can just type in Itasca Books. It'll come right up. Empathy and Eyebrows. I have a brand new podcast called Help a Human Out, which I absolutely love. It is what it says it is. We find a person who has a question that they need help answered. We find them the expert through either like study or lived experience. And then we have these conversations about how to navigate what they're asking about. I love it. You can find that anywhere. You can find podcasts, so please subscribe. So that's pretty much where we are. And also, if you by chance could or do have $1 to spare, Della does have a GoFundMe. It is in the link in our bios because this has been one of the most expensive things ever.
Yeah.
And navigating the financial piece of it has been probably the hardest part.
I know. I can't imagine what those bills look like every month on top of just regular living.
It's not even hospital bills. It's also the food bills. Because she has such crazy dietary restrictions and needs, groceries are not regular groceries around here. They are like, we will put you in debt kind of groceries.
Oh my gosh.
So it's so much.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I will link to your book, your podcast, your GoFundMe, and have all that so people can get in touch with you and fall in love with you like I did. Be a big creeper. It's good. Thank you so much to Danielle for being on the podcast and sharing your experiences with us. Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.